Chapter 6 Motivation is Overrated. Environment often matters more. Annie Thorndike, a primary care physician at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, had a crazy idea. She believed she could improve the eating habits of thousands of people, staff, and visitors without changing their willpower or motivation in the slightest way. In fact, she did not plan on talking to them at all. Thorndike and her colleagues designed a 6 month study to alter the choice architecture of hospital cafeteria. They started by changing now how drinks were arranged in the room. Originally, the refrigerators located next to the cash registers in a cafeteria were filled with only soda. The researchers added water as an option to each one. Additionally, they placed baskets of bottled water next to the food station. Throughout the room, soda was still in the primary refrigerator, but water was as now all available at all drink locations. Over the next 3 months, the number of soda sales at the hospital dropped by 11.4%. Meanwhile, the sales of bottled increased by 25.8%. They made similar adjustment and saw similar results with the food in the cafeteria. Nobody has said a word to anyone eating here. People often choose products not because of what they are, but because where they are. If I walk into the kitchen and see a plate of cookies on the counter, I'll pick a half of dozen and start eating, even if I had not been thinking about them beforehand and did not necessarily feel hungry. If communal table at the office is always filled with donuts and bagels, it's going to be hard not to grab one every now and then. Your habit are changed your habits change depending on the room you are in and the cues you are in front of. Environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. Despite their unique universities, personalities, certain behavior tends to rise again and again under certain environmental conditions. In church, people tend to talk to whispers on the dark secret. People act way and guarded. In this way, the most common form of change is not internal but external. We are changed by world around us. Every habit is context dependent. In 1936, psychologist Kurt Lewin wrote a simple equation that makes a powerful statement: behavior is a function of the person in their environment. B is equals to function of P and E. It did not take long for Lewis's equation to be tested in a business. In 1952, the economist Hawkins Stens described a phenomenon he called suggestion by impulsion buying, which is triggered when a shopper sees a product for the first time and visualizes a need for it. In other words, customer will occasionally buy products not because they want them but because of how they are presented to them. For example, items are at eye level tend to be purchased more than those down near the floor. For this reason, you will find expensive brand names featured in easy to reach locations in store shelves because they drive the most profit, while cheaper alternatives are tucked away in harder to reach spots. The same goes for end caps, and which are the units at the end of L's. End caps are money making machines for retailers because they are obvious locations that encounter a lot of food traffic. For example, 45% of Coca Cola sales same comes specifically from end of the L racks. The more obviously available product and service is, the more likely you are try to it. People drink Bud Light because it is every it is in every bar and visit Starbucks because it is in every corner. We like to think that we are in control. If we choose waters over soda, we assume it to because we wanted to do so. The truth, however, is that many of the actions we take each day are shaped by not by purposeful drive and choice, but by the most obvious option. Every living has its own method of for sensing and understanding the world. Eagles have remarkable long distance vision. Snakes can smell by tasting the air with their highly sensitive tongues. Sharks can detect small amount of electricity and vibrations in the water caused nearby fish. Even bacteria have chemoreceptors, tiny sensory cells that allow them to detect toxic chemicals in their environment. In human, perception is directed by sensory nervous system. We perceive the world through sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. But we also have other ways of sensing stimuli. Some are conscious, but many are non-conscious. For instance, you can notice when the temperature drops before a storm, or when the pain in your gut rises during a stomach ache, when you fall off balance while making on rocky ground, receptors in your body pick up on a wide range of internal stimuli, such as the amount of salt in your blood or the need to drink when thirsty. The most powerful of all human sensory abilities, however, is vision. The human body has about 11 million sensory receptors. Approximately 10 million of those are dedicated to sight. Some experts estimate that half of the brain's sources are used on vision, given that we are more dependent on vision than on any other sense. It should come as no surprise that visual cues are greatest catalyst of human behavior. For this reason, a small change in what you see can lead to big shift in what you do. As a result, you can imagine how important it is to live and work that are filled with productive cues and devoid of unproductive ones. Thankfully, there is good news in this respect. You don't have to be victim of every environment. You can also be architect of it. How to design your environment for success. During the energy crisis of oil embargo of the 1970s, Dutch researchers began to pay close attention to countries' energy usage. In one suburb near Amsterdam, they found that some homeowners use 30% less energy than their neighbors, despite the same home being similar in size and getting electricity for the same price. It turned out houses in this neighborhood were nearly identical, except for one feature, the location of the electrical meter. Some had one in the basement and other had electrical meter upstairs in the main hallway. As you may guess, the homes with the meter located in the main hallway used less electricity. When their energy was observed, obvious and easy to track, people changed their behavior. Every habit is initiated by a cue, and we are more likely to notice cue than stand out. Unfortunately, the environments we live, it turned out the houses in this neighborhood were nearly identical, except for one feature, the location of the electrical meter. Some had one in the basement, others had the electrical meter upstairs in the main hallway. As you may guess, the home with meters located in the main hallway uses less electricity. When their energy was obviously and easy to track, people change their behavior. Every habit is initiated by a cue, and we are more likely to notice cues that stand out. Unfortunately, the environments where we live and often work make it easy not to do certain actions because there is no obvious cue to trigger the behavior. It's not easy to practice the guitar when it is tucked out away in the closet. It's not easy to read a book when the bookshelf is in the corner of the guest room. It's not easy to take your vitamins when they are out of sight in the pantry. When the cues that spark a habit are subtle or hidden, they are easy to ignore. By comparison, creating obvious visual cues can draw your attention toward a desired habit. In early 1990s, the cleaning staff at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam installed a small sticker that looked like a fly near the center of each urinal. Apparently, when men stepped to the urinal, they aimed for what they thought was a bug. The stickers improved their aim and significantly reduced spillage around the urinals. Further analysis determined that the stickers cut bathroom cleaning cost by 8% per year. I have experienced the power of obvious cues in my life. I used to buy apples from the store, put them in a crisper in the bottom of the refrigerator, and forget all about them. By the time I remembered the apples would have gone bad, I never saw them, so I never ate them. Eventually, I took my own advice and redesigned my environment. I bought a large display bowl and placed it in the middle of the kitchen counter. The next time I bought apples, that was where they want out in open, where I could see them. Almost like magic, I began eating a few apples each day simply because they were obvious rather than out of sight. Here are few ways you can redesign your environment and make the cues for your preferred habit more obvious. First, if you want to remember to take your medication each night, put your pill bottle directly next to the faucet on the bathroom counter. If you want to practice guitar more frequently, place your guitar stand in the middle of the living room. If you want to remember to send more thank you notes, keep a stack of stationery on your desk. If you want to drink more water, fill up a water bottle each morning and place them in the common locations around the house. If you want to make a habit a big part of your life, make the cue a big part of your environment. The most persistent behavior usually have multiple cues. Consider how many different ways a smoker could be promptly to pull out a cigarette, driving in the car, seeing a friend smoke, feeling stressed at work, and so on. The same strategy can be employed for good habits. By sprinkling triggers throughout your surrounding, you increase the odds that you will think about your habit throughout the day. Make sure the best choice is most obvious one. Making a better decision is easy and natural when the cues for good habits are right in front of you. Environment design is powerful not only because it influences how we engage with the world, but also because we rarely do it. Most people live in a world others have created for them, but you can also alter the spaces where you live and work to increase your exposure to positive cues and reduce your exposure to negative ones. Environment design allow you to take back control and become the architect of your life. Be the designer of your world and not merely the consumer of it. The context is the cue. Cues that trigger a habit can start you out of very specific, but over time your habits become associated not with single trigger but with the entire context surrounding the behavior. For example, many people drink more in social situations than they would ever drink alone. The trigger is rarely a single cue but rather the whole situation. Watching your friends order drinks, hears the music at the bar, seeing the bars beers on the tap. We mentally assign our habits to the location in which they occur: the home, the office, the gym. Each location develops a connection to the certain habits and routines. You establish a particular relationship with the object on your desk, the items on your kitchen counter, the things in your bedroom. Our behavior is not defined by the objects in the environment but our relationship to them. In fact, this is a useful way to think about the influence of environment on your behavior. Stop thinking about your environment as filled with objects. Start thinking about it as filled with relationships. Think in terms of how you interact with the spaces around you. For one person, her couch is the place where she reads for an hour each night. For someone else, the couch is where he watches television and eats a bowl of ice cream after work. Different people have different memories and thus different associated with the same plates. The good news, you can train yourself to link a particular habit to the particular context. In one study, scientists instructed insomniacs to get into the bed only when they were tired. If they could not fall asleep, they were told to sit in the different room until they become sleepy. Over time, subjects began to associate with the context of their bed with the action of the sleeping, and it became easier to fall asleep when they climbed on the bed. Their brains learned that sleeping, not browsing on their phones, not watching television, not staring at the clock was only action that happened in that room. The power of context also reveals an important strategy. Habits can be easier to change in a new environment. It helps to escape the subtle triggers and cues that nudge you toward your current habits. Go to a new place, a different coffee shop, a bench in the park, a corner of your room you seldom use, and create a new routine there. It is easier to associate a new habit with a new context than to build a new habit in the face of competing cues. It can be difficult to go to bed early if you watch television in your bedroom each night. It can be hard to study in the living room without getting distracted if that's where you always play video games. But when you step outside your normal environment, you leave your behavioral biases behind. You are not battling over environmental cues, which are new, allow new habits to form without interruption. Want to think more creatively? Move to a bigger room, a rooftop patio, or building with an expansive architecture. Take a break from the space where you do daily work, which is also linked to your current thought patterns. Trying to eat healthier, it is likely that you shop on autopilot at a regular supermarket. Try a new grocery store. You may find it easier to avoid unhealthy food when your brain does not allow automatically know where it is located in the store. When you can't manage to get an entirely new environment to redefine or rearrange your current one, create a separate space for work, study, exercise, entertainment, and cooking. The mantra I find useful is one space, one use. When I started my career as an entrepreneur, I would often work from my couch or at the kitchen table. In the evenings, I found it difficult to stop working. There was no clear vision between the end of the work time and between the beginning of a personal time. Was the kitchen table my office or the space where I eat meals? Was the couch where I relaxed or where I sent meals? Everything happened in the same place. A few years later, I could finally afford to move a new home with a separate room for my office. Suddenly, work was something that happened in here, and personal life was something that happened out there. It was easier for me to turn off the professional side of my brain when there was clear dividing line between the work life and home life. Each room had one primary use. The kitchen was for cooking, the office was for working. Whenever possible, avoid mixing the context of one habit with the another. When you start mixing context, you will start mixing habits, and easier ones will usually win out. This is one reason why versatility of modern technology is both a strength and a weakness. You can use your phone for all sorts of tasks, which makes it a powerful device. But when you can use your phone to do nearly anything, it becomes hard to associate it with one task. You want to be productive, but you are also conditioned to browse social media, check email, and play video games whenever you open your phone. It's a mishmash of cues. You may be thinking you don't understand. I live in New York City. My apartment is the size of a smartphone. I need each room to play multiple roles. Fair enough. If your space is limited, divide your room into activity zones: a chair for reading, a desk for writing, a table for eating. You can do the same with your digital spaces. I know a writer who uses his computer only for writing, his tablet only for reading, and his phone only for social media and texting. Every habit should have a home. If you can manage to stick with this strategy, each context will become associated with the particular habit and mode of thought. Habits thrive under predictable circumstances like these. Focuses come automatically when you're sitting at your work desk. Relaxation is easier when you are in a space designed for that purpose. Sleep comes quickly when it is the only thing that happens in your bedroom. If you want behaviors that are stable and predictable, you need an environment that is stable and predictable. A stable environment where everything has a place and a purpose is an environment where habits can easily form. Chapter summary: small changes in the context can lead to large changes in behavior over time. Every habit is initiated by cue. We are more likely to notice cues that stand out. Make the cues of good habits obvious in your environment. Generally, good your habits become associated not with a single trigger but with the entire context surrounding the behavior. The context becomes the cue. It is easier to build new habits in a new environment because you are not fighting against the old cues.